Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is day 15 of AWS Zero to Hero series, and in this video we will implement this entire CI/CD solution. Specifically, we will learn about AWS code deploy and how to deploy the application on EC2 instance. The reason is, in the last class we have already implemented all of these stages. We have implemented the project till AWS code pipeline invocation of AWS code build. That means we have completed the CI part in the last class, and today's class we will explore the CD part. So if you haven't watched the previous video, that is day 14 of our AWS DevOps course, I'll highly recommend you to watch that before learning about today's continuous delivery process, because CD will not have much value without CI. So firstly learn about the CI, how CI is implemented on AWS, then watch today's video to understand about the CD process. And one more thing is, we have already reached day 15. That means we are halfway down the AWS DevOps Zero to Hero series. And in this 15 days, we got a very strong foundational understanding of AWS. We have learned about the core concepts of AWS, and the next 15 days is going to be the high level concepts, where we are going to touch about the concepts like serverless. We'll look at the projects like AWS cloud optimization. I'll focus on creating a project and explain you how cloud optimization or cost optimization works on AWS. Then we will move towards monitoring solutions on AWS. We will understand the container orchestration, that is ECS and EKS. We will do a project on understanding how applications are migrated to AWS. So these are the things that are lined up, which are very, very interesting, and definitely they are at a high level, but I'll make sure each of you understand it and you can add these things to your resume, because they are very critical projects like cloud cost optimization, cloud migration, which will add a value to your resume. So I'm personally excited about the next 15 days journey of AWS DevOps Zero to Hero. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe today, and also share our channel with your friends and colleagues. Now let's get started with today's video. As I explained you, today we will focus on code deploy and how to integrate the code deploy with EC2 instance. Finally, the application that we were using, the simple Python Flask application that we have built in the last class, we will use the same application and deploy it onto the EC2 instance, right? So this is going to be the demonstration, and definitely once I implement CI/CD, the entire solution I'll show you in one single stretch. That means at the end of the video, you can also see how the entire CI/CD is implemented on AWS in one single go. Perfect. So as we get started, let's go to the AWS account. So I hope you are seeing the right screen. Let me verify. Perfect. So you are watching the AWS screen. So you can log into the AWS account using your root account or IAM user and just search for code deploy here. So once you search for code deploy, you can go to the AWS code pipeline, code deploy page, right? So this is where we are. AWS code deploy, and it has multiple components like deployments, applications, deployment configuration. So we will understand what each of them does. They are very, very simple concepts to understand. But the only thing here in today's video is you have to watch very carefully how I am doing the installations, because even if you miss a single point, today's video demonstration will be difficult. So even while doing the video, I might run into some issues. So watch carefully how I am troubleshooting those issues. Perfect. So firstly, go to the code deploy page, click on create application. So again, what are we doing? We are implementing this part first, and finally I'll invoke this part using the code pipeline. Exactly what we have done in yesterday's class, where we are using code pipeline as an orchestrator that invokes code build and invokes code deploy, right? That's the responsibility of code pipeline. It's an orchestrator basically. So firstly, let's build the code deploy solution. So build the code deploy solution. You might have seen my AWS repository already. Just search for github.com. You can find this link in the description as well. I am Veeramalla, AWS DevOps Zero to Hero. So here you have a folder called Day-14. We are using the same application, so that's why I did not create another folder for day 15. So in the day 14 folder, you have the simple Python app, right? So we will use the same specifications. So there is a Docker file, there is app.py. Additionally, for today's class, I have created app spec.yaml, start container.sh, and stop container.sh. Don't worry about these things. I'll explain in detail what are these things. And for explaining you from scratch, what I'll do is I'll recreate all of these files. Instead of using these files from this location, what I'll do is I will create those files here and I'll explain you right from here. Okay, so that you can also follow the video and you can also fork this repository or star this repository, create a copy of this one from your end, and you can also perform it as it is. Okay, so first of all, what I need to do is for the AWS code deploy, you need to first create an application. Okay, so what is application here? Basically, code deploy is one software that AWS is providing, right? In your organization, you might have multiple applications. So one application can be considered as a one microservice. Let's say you're working for Amazon.com. Amazon.com has payments as a microservice, transactions as a microservice. You have login, logout. Each of them can be different microservices. And as a DevOps engineer, for each microservice, you will follow the same approach. And as you know, AWS, things can be done from the UI, things can be done from the CLI. So today's video, I'm showing you through the UI because you will understand whenever you try to understand the things, definitely do it from the UI because you will understand the complete flow. Once you master it, you can use the CLI, right? So if there are 200 applications, then either using the UI or using CLI, you have to create 200 applications here, right? So let's provide name of the application. Let's again call it as sample Python app. When you're working in organization, you will give much better names. Probably you will call this as payments dev example.com or payments dev amazon.com. Okay, so you will mention these things very clearly. But because we are doing a demonstration, I'll just call it as sample Python Flask app or anything, right? And now provide the platform where you want to deploy. Do you want to deploy on EC2? Do you want to deploy on ECS? Do you want to deploy on AWS Lambda? So the thing is that I'm not going to explain you using ECS and Lambda because we haven't covered both Lambda functions and ECS in the course, which will be covered in the later stages. So many people might not be acquainted with these things. People are learning AWS using our course from zero to hero. So let's use the one that we have already learned, that is EC2. And EC2 is also one of the widely used options. So either people go with ECS or people go with EC2. Lambda, when I explain about Lambda, you will understand when and why it is used. When you want to go towards serverless, then Lambda is used. Okay, let's click on create application, right? So till now, I have just created application. Similarly, when you have 200, 300, 500 applications, you will have to create 500 applications in the same way. You might ask me, Abhishek, this is a very repetitive task. Then yes, to automate, you can use the CLI. But for learning the process, you can use the UI. Because without UI, you will not understand what exactly you are doing. CLI is just bunch of commands. So anyone can give you the commands and you can execute it, but you will not understand the underlying workflow. So now I have created this one. Now what is the goal? So the goal is that this code deploy should deploy an application onto the EC2 instance, right? So this code deploy should take an application and it should deploy the application onto the EC2 instance, right? So I have created, code deploy service is already there. Now I have created an application. So I need an EC2 instance now, right? So why you need EC2 instance? Because using this EC2 instance, you will you will use this EC2 instance as a hosting platform, or you will use this EC2 instance as a platform where you deploy your application. So firstly, let's go and create an EC2 instance. Okay, so let me take my screen, AWS console. Now sign into your AWS account, or to make it much simple, I can just search for EC2 here and take a new tab. Perfect. Create an EC2 instance and you have to configure this EC2 instance in some steps. I'll explain you those steps. And in today's video, if you watch, I'm not referring to the documentation that much because the code deploy documentation is not that great. Whenever the documentation is good, I always refer you people. I always tell you people that go to the documentation after this video and learn from the documentation. And code deploy documentation is slightly tricky and it will create a lot of confusion. So that's why I'm not going through the documentation today. But whenever it is required, I'll show you the documentation as well. Click on the instances, click on launch instance. This process, I think you have mastered till now. Everyone here knows how to create EC2 instances. By default, using auto scaling groups inside a VPC, everything we have done, right? So we know about this thing. But for sample Python, let's do it one more time for sample Python app. Let's call it sample Python. I think that is fine. Now let's provide Ubuntu. We keep using Ubuntu throughout all the videos. So let's use Ubuntu only. T2 micro is the image that I've selected. Key value pair, use whatever key value pair that you have. And go to your network configurations, make sure that the public IP is enabled and you are using the VPC of your choice. Better go with the default VPC so that whenever you are doing proof of concept, you can be comfortable, right? So I'm going with the default VPC and I have enabled the public IP address. Some people are not seeing the public IP address, they are complaining about it. The thing is, just go here and see if the auto assign public IP is enabled or disabled. After that, SSH is enabled. If you want to enable any specific thing like HTTP port or something, you can do it. Maybe towards the end of the video, we will enable it for our application. Right now, I have not enabled it. Now click on the create EC2 instance. So as the EC2 instance is created, one thing that you should notice, I mean, the concept that I have not explained till now is for every resource on AWS, you can create tags. Okay. What is tag? Tag is basically for the identification purpose. Let's say there are EC2 instances created by different teams. You can create tags to differentiate the EC2 instance for your team and the other team. And also these tags play a critical role when we learn about the cost optimization or to understand which resources are created and not deleted. So when we do the cost optimization, you will understand more significance of tags. But for now, just understand that whenever you create an instance, right? So you can go to the specific instance and in the instance settings, you have option for manage tags, or during the creation also you can see it. You can provide a specific name and value for your EC2 instance using the tags. So in real life use cases, how tags will help is I'll create this EC2 instance and I'll provide project payments, and every resource on this EC2, not just the EC2, on the AWS, this payments project or the DevOps engineer of the payments project or the application developers of the payment project, whether they are creating EC2 instances, whether they are creating S3 buckets, whether they are creating EBS volumes, anything, they will use the same tag. They will use the same key value pair. Now, it will help DevOps engineers, it will help management to keep a track of what resources they have created. Instead of going to EC2, instead of going to S3, instead of going, what I'll do is I will filter using this tags. I'll say that, okay, all the resources in AWS, just provide me what are the resources that this payments team has created. Okay, so what DevOps engineer will do, this DevOps engineer or the AWS admin, he'll just pass the key value pair saying that project payments, give me the entire list of AWS resources. Now project transactions, give me entire list of AWS services this transaction team has created. Similarly, you can get information of each and every project and what they are creating. So these tags can be multiple tags as well. You can create one single tag or you can create multiple tags depending upon your requirement. Right now, this is one tag. Your management might say that everyone who creates any resource on AWS, they have to mandatorily create this tag. Okay, and then as within your team, you can also keep specific things like environment, production, environment staging, environment unit testing, or environment development. Now, this way, again, it will help your DevOps engineers or management to track how many EC2 instances are there in production, how many EC2 instances are there in staging, how many EC2 instances are there in development, or overall, how many resources are there in production, right? So this way you can uh, make use of tags. And in this video, why we will use tags is when you create a tag like this, let me say name sample Python. Okay, so I will create a tag like this, and this tag is used by the AWS code deploy service. Why it will use? If we go back to the diagram, the code deploy service here needs an EC2 instance. Now there can be multiple EC2 instances, right? People like me, I might create an EC2 instance with name example.com. Again, within the entire AWS account, if someone else create EC2 instance with example.com, then it will be very difficult for the code deploy to identify which example.com should I refer to. Should I deploy on this example.com EC2 instance, or should I deploy on this example.com EC2 instance? So that's why for code deploy, it will be easy if it identifies the EC2 instances with tags, right? And also the other advantage is that code deploy can be used to deploy to one single EC2 instance or multiple EC2 instances. So you can provide multiple EC2 instances with the same tag and assign it to the code deploy. And code deploy will understand, okay, future, even if they had 10 more EC2 instances, if the key value pair is same, I have to deploy to 20 EC2 instances, 100 EC2 instances, or 10 EC2 instances. So it will identify using the key value pair. You will understand that in next couple of minutes. So now I have created the EC2 instance and I have created the tag for the EC2 instance. Now, one more thing that we need to do within this EC2 instance is we have to install a agent inside this EC2 instance. Now, why I should install a agent and what agent is this? So this agent is called as a code deploy agent. If you have worked previously with Jenkins, you know that when you install Jenkins, you create an agent, and you have a service running on this agents which will link the Jenkins master and slave. Better example would be GitLab or GitHub Actions. When we have demonstrated that, what I have shown you is when you create worker nodes or when you create self-running hosts in GitLab. So we were also installing a software there that is called as an agent or runner software. Similarly, with AWS Code Deploy as well, you have to install a software or agent inside the EC2 instance. If there are 10 EC2 instances, then you have to install it in each of the EC2 instance. So now let's go to the specific EC2 instance here. And what I'll do here is I will log into this EC2 instance through my terminal and watch carefully the list of steps that I'm doing. So this list of steps are very simple if you follow the video carefully. Okay, so this terminal might have expired. So let me terminate it and create a new terminal. Right? So just give me a second. I'm opening a new terminal at my end. So there are a bunch of softwares that I usually install on my terminal. Probably someday I'll also show you about those things. Sorry for this one here. Let me get a terminal. Yeah. So now I have a terminal here. Let me increase the font and let me also change the color of it. The Biobo is enabled, right? Go to the view. New window, home preview, right? So let's pick a terminal that is colorful and easy to understand. Perfect. Now within this terminal, I will log into the EC2 instance. Okay. So what is the EC2 instance IP? This is the EC2 instance IP. SSH minus I. Should I increase the font a little big? Yeah, now it should be good. So SSH minus I, location of my PEM file, right? Followed by Ubuntu at the IP address. Now I have logged into the EC2 instance, and this document that I'm going to share, you have to follow the same document for the steps. If you don't follow the same steps, and if you refer some other document, then you will end up in a lot of issues creating the agent. And like I told you, the agent installation becomes tricky if you don't follow or if you mess up somewhere. So this is the document. I'll also put the link in the description. You can use the same link, and let's follow the step-by-step procedure. First of all, you have to update the packages. So sudo apt update will update the packages. And then what I'm trying to do is I'm installing the Ruby full package. So this might take overall some 5 to 10 minutes when you're doing it for the first time, right? And it is definitely expected. Sudo apt install and just press -y. Then let's go to the next package. Next thing that we need to install is wget. You can also put this entire thing as a script and install, but when you are trying to do it for the first time, it is important to understand what are things that you are installing. There might be some regulations within your organization. Your organization might not allow few things to install, right? So now comes the important thing. What AWS says here is to install the runner, you have to replace the bucket name and the region identifier in the region that you have created the EC2 instance. This is for less latency, right? When you want to download, if you download it from a region that is nearby you, then you can download it little quicker. So in my case, I have created the instance in US East 1. And what is the name of bucket? We can learn from the documentation. So what does it say? Bucket name can be found from this document. So open the document and copy the bucket name according to your location. I'm in North Virginia location. I mean, I've created the instance in North Virginia. So let's copy from here. That is US East 1. Where is it? Terminal. Yep. Perfect. So remove the white spaces. US East 1 dot S3 US East 1. Perfect. Now let's install this one. So the install script is downloaded. Now what you will do is go back to the document and run this command to give permissions to the install. So if you think you already know this, you can go a little quicker here, play the video at 2x, but make sure you are not missing anything. Now I've entered this follow thing and I've granted the permissions. Now what does it say? Do one of the following thing. Don't do all of the things, just do one of the things. So let's go with the latest one, the one that is on the top. Rest all things will provide you information, like let's say you want log, then you can write the installation log to a temporary file, or you can also get this from the S3 bucket and perform the installation. But for us, the first one would work. And if you see here, what did it say? Executing, and the execution is successful, right? Now, finally, what you need to do is you need to start the service. So to start the service, just run this command initially, which will show you the status. AWS code deploy host agent, starting the code deploy host agent, right? Let's say if in your case, when you entered this command, if it was showing something like no AWS code agent running, then you have to perform this command. And once you run it again, you will see the same thing. Started LSB, AWS code deploy host agent is started, right? So if you are watching, or in your case, on your instance, if you are seeing this error, don't get confused or don't panic. You can simply run this specific command and it will work in a good way for you. Perfect. So now my agent installation is also done, which is a very good thing, right? So now I have done pretty much half of the project is done regarding the continuous delivery. So we have installed the agent, we have created the application. So now the next thing that you have to do is give permissions to this EC2 instance. right? What kind of permissions is required? So this EC2 instance is going to talk to the AWS code deploy, right? And similarly, code deploy is going to talk to the EC2 instance. So right now we are at the creation of EC2 instance. So what I'll do is I'll create a role and I'll grant this role. I'll grant this EC2 instance with a role to talk to the AWS code deploy. So again, this concept I've explained very clearly on day 2. When you are granting permissions to users to access any services on AWS, then we use IAM users. Whereas if we are granting permissions to any service to access another service in AWS, then we use IAM roles, right? So roles is for services and users is for users like us, you and me. So now I'll go to the IAM tab one more time. And within the IAM tab, now what I'll do is I will grant, firstly, I'll create a role and that role will have permissions to talk to AWS code deploy, right? So go to role section, say EC2 code deploy role. Oh, sorry, I need to create a role, right? I'm searching, sorry. So create role and here search for services. So you can also grant permissions to EC2 and grant permissions to what was that, code deploy, right? So I've granted permissions to code deploy. I've unchecked the EC2. So code deploy is more than enough for now. So allows code deploy to call AWS services such as auto scaling on your behalf. Okay. And similarly, you are assigning the same thing to the EC2 instance, because EC2 instance, the runner in the EC2 instance should also access this one, right? So what you can do here, click on the next button and click on next. Provide name for this role, EC2 code deploy role. So now EC2 instance will be able to talk to the code deploy. Create role. Now how to assign this specific thing? Sorry, creation is not done, right? Yeah. Now creating is taking place, like the creation is taking place. Now we will take the same role that I have just created, EC2 code deploy role, and I'll assign this role to the EC2 instance, right? Follow the steps very carefully. Click on the instance, click on actions, security, modify IAM role, and provide that thing here, code deploy role. Update IAM role. And once you update the IAM role, you also need to go to your terminal one more time and restart the service. Which service? The agent service, right? So just search for status and submit a command called restart. If you're not doing this restart, the agent within the EC2 instance, it will not be able to communicate to the code deploy. Every time you make such modifications, you have to restart the process, right? Specifically in case of AWS code deploy. So this will take a couple of minutes because it has to stop the service and it has to start the service. Perfect. Now it is started, but you have to make sure you run the status command again and verify that it is started. Perfect. Started. So the configuration with respect to EC2 instance is done. Now let's configure the code deploy. So to configure the code deploy, let's go back to it. Till now, what we have created in the code deploy, we have created an application, right? But what is the location of this application? Where this application is, right? You haven't provided that details. You just created a folder for the application and you just said that this is the name of my application and this is where I want to deploy. But where is the source code? What type of application is this? How to execute this application? How to deploy this application? Is it a Docker image? Is it a shell script? Is it a HTML file? We haven't provided that details. So to provide that details, you have to provide them in the deployments. But before that, before I move to that section, a very simple thing needs to be done. That is in the code deploy, let's provide this EC2 instance that we have deployed as an agent. Okay. So till now we have created EC2 instance, we have configured it, but we haven't set up this connection, right? If we go back here, so what is doing? Code deploy is deploying to this EC2 instance. So in code deploy, there can be 100 applications. There can be 1000 applications. So each of the application can go to different EC2 instances, right? So payments application deploys in payment EC2 instance. Similarly, transaction application can be deployed to transaction EC2 instance. So now when you create an application in code deploy, you have to provide what is the target group, just like we do in the load balancer, right? So similarly for code deploy also you have to provide the target group. So now go to the this section, and here the target group is called as deployment groups. Create deployment group and provide the EC2 instance. Enter a deployment group name. So let me call this as sample Python app. Enter service role. So we can use the same service role. The reason is that because in this service role, I have granted the code deploy access. Now I'll go to the service role and modify the EC2 access as well. Either you can use two different service roles, or you can just create one service role for the entire process and grant the required permissions. It's up to you now. Okay. So in my case, what I'll prefer is, okay, so I have already created a service role for EC2 instance and granted it access to code deploy. Now let's go back to that specific thing only and just add access to EC2 instance, so that EC2 instance can talk to code deploy and code deploy can talk to EC2 instance. In one single role, I'm doing entire thing. If you want two roles, you can create two roles as well. So let's go to IAM. I'm just trying to simplify the process. Go to EC2 code deploy role, and here add permissions, attach policies, just give EC2 full access. Done. Add permissions. Policy permissions are attached. Super. Now let's go back and so this one is, it is asking, do you want to deploy in a very straightforward way, or do you want to go with a blue-green deployment process? So to do blue-green deployment process, you will need a load balancer. You will need two different sites. So I've explained this in one of my videos where I've explained about the deployment strategies. I've explained about canary mode of deployment. I've explained about blue-green deployment model, alternate backend deployment model. So you will find that video useful if you want to learn about deployment strategies. Today we'll go with a very plain single deployment strategy because we are just learning code deploy. So I'll also try to put that link in the description where you can learn about deployment strategies that I've created a video on. Amazon EC2 instance, key value pair, name, code deploy, right? So this is the name that I've given. Oh, sorry, I've given the name as sample Python, right? Name sample Python, and immediately it will say one unique matched instance. Let me change this and show you. Let's say, let me add this as code deploy, for example. Okay, or let's add something like ABCD. So it said immediately 0 unique matched instances. And when you change this to sample Python, you will immediately notice one unique matched instance. So this way, if there are 100 EC2 instances, and for this specific sample Python application, you want to dedicate some 10 EC2 instances, or you want to dedicate one single EC2 instance, how code deploy application will understand? Using the tags, right? Scroll down. You don't have to install the agent because I have already installed the agent. So you don't have to change this. You don't need a load balancer. Now click on the create deployment group button. Done. So the deployment group is created. Perfect. Now the deployment group is also created. We are one step towards the creation or the continuous delivery model. That one step is to create the deployment itself. Right now, what did we do till now? We have created code deploy application. Right? What is code deploy application? So inside the code deploy service, you have registered your application, saying that as a DevOps engineer, I have payments application. So I've created a folder for the payments application. Folder is nothing but I've registered the payments application. Now I've created an EC2 instance for this payment application for deploying the payments on the EC2 instance, right? So I've integrated both of them. I said, this is my target group and this has to be implemented, but we haven't done the actual thing, how to deploy, right? When we were doing the code build, I've showed you that there is a file called as buildspec.yaml. Similarly, for code deploy also, you have a file called as appspec.yaml. This is buildspec.yaml and this is appspec.yaml. And how you will do this configuration is you will put this appspec.yaml inside your GitHub repository where your source code is hosted, and you have a configuration here. So if you go back to the applications, click on the application that you have, and here you have tab called deployments, right? So here you have to create the deployment for your application, and this is the final step that you have to do, right? And of course you have to write the appspec.yaml. That is very, very simple. I'll show you. And now provide the deployment group. Sample Python app is the deployment group. And next is your application hosted on S3 bucket, or is your application hosted on GitHub? Why this thing is being done? Because the code deploy needs to understand where your application code is, where the appspec.yaml is, how to deploy this application. Is it a Python application? Is it Java application? Is it a Docker container? Is it a HTML file? So for understanding all of these things, you have to provide the location. Now, in your case, when you do this, probably if you're doing this for the first time, it will ask you for authentication with GitHub. It will ask you for your GitHub token, or it will ask you for your GitHub username and password. You have to provide here. In my case, that is already done. So I have already authenticated. So the connect to GitHub is grayed out. In your case, this button will be visible and you have to click on it. Now provide the repository name. So the repository name in my case is Veeramalla is my user, followed by AWS DevOps 0 to hero. If you are forking my repository, just change this name. If you are creating a new repository altogether, you have to change this, your GitHub username, and you also change the repo name as well. It's up to you. Now provide the commit ID. Why you need to provide the commit ID? The reason is that if you are doing a complete CI/CD process, you don't need this commit ID and it will automatically pick the commit. But what we are trying to do here is we are trying to verify if the code CD, the continuous delivery, is working fine or not, right? So what I can do here is either I can provide, just go here and search for the commit ID. So go to your latest commits, click on the commit ID, right? And just come back here and provide the commit ID, right? So you can do this one because firstly I have to test if my continuous delivery is working fine or not. Later I can integrate it with the code pipeline. Perfect. Now, if you want to provide any description, you can provide description. And additional deployment behavior settings, I don't need anything at this point of time. Rollback configuration also I don't want. So let me go ahead and click on the create deployment button. So now the create deployment is also done. So you have set up this entire thing, but now you will notice that the deployment process will fail. The reason is inside this one, right here. If you go to my AWS deploy 0 to hero, I haven't provided at the root of your GitHub repository. You have to provide the appspec.yaml, right? So appspec.yaml always has to be at the root of the repository. If you are using S3 buckets, then you can provide the folder path where exactly inside your S3 bucket the folder is. There you can put in any folder path. But if you are using the GitHub repository, then you have to put it at the root of the repository. In my case, I'm using this same repository. So that's why I have this day 1, day 2, day 3, everything. And inside the day 14, I have the source code. But if you want to try this by yourself, then what you can do is instead of using my repository, create a new GitHub repository, just copy this source code. Let's say you don't know how to write a Flask application. Just copy this source code and put this at the root folder, right? So you can put this at this folder level. And what you can do is appspec.yaml, you can put something here, or it's up to you. I mean, you can take that flexibility. In last class, I showed you the AWS code build, and in the AWS code build, you can configure path and you can put that code build.yaml anywhere, right? For example, the build spec.yaml, you can put in this folder, or you can put it any location, or you can also write it at the AWS level. Whereas code deploy will not offer that much flexibility if you are using github.com. So I need to provide that appspec.yaml in this location only. So if you go back and see, that will definitely fail. Where was it? Sorry, this one here, right? So see, it is still in progress. Okay. And if you go to, I mean, if you just scroll down here, right? So as you scroll down, you'll find a section called view events. If you go here, see, step 1, step 2 has succeeded. That means it was able to connect to the github.com. So github.com connection is successful, but after the connection, it is not able to fetch the file because it does not find the file at all. I haven't put the file. So now what I can do is I can simply go to this repository where I've already created the file. So you have to put the same name itself. You cannot even change the name. The name has to be appspec.yaml only. Now copy this entire thing of appspec.yaml. And now what I'll do, see, watch carefully, is I'll go to this root level, and I don't know if how many of you know this trick. If you just go to GitHub repository and click on the dot, right? You just have to go to your keyboard and click on dot button, and it will convert your GitHub repository on your browser itself to a Visual Studio Code setup. Okay, so the advantage will be if you want to modify or if you want to update multiple files at once, then instead of cloning this repository and going to your local, you can do it from here itself, right? So this is a simple trick if you don't know. So let me remove all of these things. And of course, you can clone this repository and do it at your local as well. But just wanted to share this tip. And whenever I want to modify files quickly, I also use this technique. So now let me create a file here. Click on this file button and let's call this as appspec.yml. Go to day 14 and I have provided an example here. Click on appspec.yaml. Now click on the build, sorry, where is it? Appspec.yaml here and paste it. Okay. Now you have pasted this configuration here. And what I'll do next is this is the version, this is the OS, and inside the hooks, I have two steps. One is to application stop, and second is I'm installing the application and running some commands. In our case, if you followed the last video, you have seen that I have my application in the Docker Hub, right? So if you go to Docker Hub, what I did was I hosted my application. Once the build process is done, the new version of my application or the latest of my application is stored in Docker Hub, right? So what I'll do is go to Abhishek F5 where I've stored my Docker. And in your case, if you're following the previous class video, then you also have some repository and some user namespace, right? So you can go to that Docker repository. And what was the application that we used? Simple Python app. Let's go with the recently updated. And this is the one. Correct? So this is the Docker pull command. So what I can do is either I can provide the command directly or I can write a script folder, right? So what I can do is I can create a scripts folder, and inside the script folder, I can create a command called startcontainer.sh. Okay, so let me do it along with you. So here I'll create a folder. Okay, and the folder name is called scripts. And inside scripts, I will create two files. File number one is called stop. Actually, stop is also not required, but still, let's do it. Stop container.sh just for your understanding. And then create a new file called start container.sh. If you're not finding this comfortable and if you want to do from your CLI, you can also do it. I just wanted to show you people so that it will help you. Now inside the stop container.sh, like if you go to day 14, I've already created a structure, right? Inside the stop container.sh, what I'm doing is I'm just printing a hi command, or you can stop the running container. But in my case, there is no container that is running already. So I can just copy paste this one. Okay. So for reference, what I'm doing is I've already put these files in day 14 folder. So you can copy the files from day 14 folder. Okay. So echo hi is what I'm doing in the stop container, and in the start container, you can add the script for Docker image pull, and you can add the script for Docker run, right? So again, go to start container.sh, copy this one, paste it here, pull the Docker image from Docker Hub. How do you pull? Docker pull. What was the image name? I think I have already copied it, right? If you go here, the command is already available. So let's paste that command. Docker pull this one, right? And now run the image. How to run? Docker run followed by, if you want to provide, if you want to run it in interactive terminal, then you can just say docker run minus t, or if you want to run it as a daemon, or if you want to run it on background, then just say docker run minus d minus p. Let's run it on a port, for example, 8000, just for an example. Okay, run it on a port 8000 and 8000. I don't remember what was I using. Let's go and check. If you go to app.py, okay, I was not using any port to run the application. I was just running the Flask application, right? So there is no problem. If you go to the Docker file, you can find what port was I using. I was exposing the port 5000. Okay, so let's also do the same thing in that case. You can go to the start container.sh here, 5000, and expose it on the 5000 of host, followed by the container itself. Perfect. So Docker run minus daemon, I'm running it as a background process. I'm exposing this port, and this is the name of the container. And if you have any specific command that you want to pass, for example, you want to run bin process, bash process, or you want to run a override the CMD, then you can do something, but I don't want to make any changes. So I'm fine with this one. So now you can click on this button, provide a commit message, add the files for code deploy, commit and push. So this will finish the entire thing. Now what you need to do is you have to go back. Okay, so just go back. Where is this one? Sorry, I keep missing the track. So now this failed, right? So what you can do is you can delete this deployment. Go to the deployments, or go to applications. Okay, go to deployments, and either you can go here and rerun the deployment or retry the deployment, or the better thing is, because we have made some changes, right? We have made some configuration changes. So what I can also do is I can create a deployment altogether. Okay, so let me call this time it as simple Python app final, for example. And again, location of my GitHub, repository name, I'm doing it all over again. AWS DevOps 0 to hero. Okay, there can be some issues. We don't have to worry about it. We can fix those issues. My job is done. I can simply change this to github.com, and I will go to the previous page, and here I can provide a commit. Where is that? So sorry about it. I'm losing the track. Commit ID. Yeah. So I'm losing the track of windows because there are so many windows open. And don't provide any description. I don't want to make any changes. Click on the create deployment. No deployment group is selected. Did I miss something? Where did I miss? Simple Python app. Oh, sorry. I entered. Okay, got it. No deployment group found with simple Python final. I just changed it, right? So I thought it has name and I have entered that. So it got angry on me. Now create deployment. I think this time it should work. Okay, so what I'll do is, for easy understanding, let's go to the application and delete the previous deployment that has failed, right? So you'll see this is, oh, this one also failed, is it? Let's see what is going wrong here. This is something that we like about debugging, right? Activities, what has failed? Perfect. I know what is the error. Can someone guess what is the error here? So all the stages have been successful, but the script has failed. What? It says Docker command not found. Now we all know the reason why Docker command is not found, because we have to go and install Docker, right? Sudo apt install docker.io -y. Perfect. Let it take its sweet time. So that's the beauty of demos, right? When we run into issues, we have to go ahead and fix the issues. So let's see now. Let me try to retry the deployment and see if I'll be successful this time. If not, I'll recreate the deployment, but mostly I'm expecting it to be done. So click on the view events so that we can also see what is happening. Wow, all of these have been successful. There are only two steps after install, application start and validate service. So I don't have these steps configured. So after install should be the last step. Probably there might be some issues with after install that I've done. If there is any issue, we will fix it. So what I have added in the after install, if you go to my repository and if you scroll down inside the scripts folder, what do I have in the after install section? So after install section is calling the start container.sh, right? So appspec.yaml after install, call the start container.sh using the root user. It has to run as a root user. Now let's see what is inside that start container.sh. Did we miss something? Docker pull command and docker run command should be good. It is looking pretty fine. Succeeded. Congratulations. The CD part is also successful. So we have implemented the continuous delivery as well. And how did we do it? So you might ask that Abhishek, you are using the latest tag. Okay, I don't want to make it complicated for people, but you can also use the tags. Okay, so how you can use the tags? Basically in this script that you are writing, right? So you can write any scripts. So you can use timestamps, you can use date, you can use version numbers, you can use SED commands, and you can modify it. Like instead of using app, right? What you can do here is you can provide some date timestamp, or you can provide a variable called date, or you can provide a version as a variable, and you can populate that version using the date, or you have these commands, right? For example, you can just say date plus and whatever format that you want to print for the version, and it will pull the same thing. And where will you configure this one? Like whenever you are pushing the image. So there are always two stages, right? One is continuous integration and the other is continuous delivery. When you are doing the continuous integration, how will you push the image is the same way how you have to pull the image, right? So if I am pushing the image using latest tag, I have to pull the image using latest tag only. In my case, in the last class demonstration, I have used the latest tag, so I cannot use any specific tags here. But if in the last class when I am pushing the image, right, during the push process, if I have pushed using a specific token, if I have pushed use a specific variable, let's say every time you push an image, you can push with date or timestamp as a tag, right? Then here also you have to use the date or timestamp when you are pulling. Because I'm using the latest, I'm not adding any such things. So now what you have noticed, the continuous delivery process is successful. Now final step is just go to code pipeline, right? Just go to code pipeline here. And all that you need to do is just add one more stage to the code pipeline that we have created in the last class. That is, just go here, click on this specific thing, the pipeline, and add one more stage. If you scroll down here, you will find where exactly is it? Disable transition. Just give me a second. You should click on the edit button. So it always confuses me if I'm doing through the UI, because usually I'm very experienced through the CLI, but doesn't matter. Click on the add stage here and say code deploy, add stage. In this, you can basically modify the stage, right? Click on action group. What kind of action do you want to perform? Again, provide it as code deploy. Action provider is AWS code deploy, right? Click on the AWS code deploy as the action. And do you want to provide any input artifact or anything? I don't want to change anything. Just say AWS code deploy and provide what is your deployment group. Okay. Choose a deployment group that already have been in the code deploy console. Why is it not showing? Just provide the application name. Perfect. And here the code deploy, right? So I've added application name and I've added the deployment group, and click on the done button. Input artifacts, source artifact, right? build artifact. That would be better. Actually, I'm not making much use of the artifacts in this specific section because this is your very first CI/CD pipeline on AWS. Later, when we use ECS, when we use EKS, we will anyways be building the CI/CD solutions again, and that time we can make it slightly complicated. Right now, click on the save button, and your entire CI/CD will be saved. Now, see what are the build stages. Right, the first stage now you will see is the source stage, that is the code commit stage. In our case we choose the GitHub, and then you have code build, and then you have code deploy. Code deploy did not run because you did not make any changes till now. Right, let's push a simple change here to the start container.sh. What I'll do is I'll just add a space, click on commit. Now this will run. Meanwhile, let us see what we have implemented. Right, so code deploy is done. GitHub is done, which is code commit, similar to AWS code commit. Then the build process is done by code build. Deployment process is being taken care by code deploy. If we go back to the diagram, have we achieved everything or not? Exactly, we have achieved everything. So instead of code commit, I used GitHub, but as a user commits code, GitHub is triggering the code pipeline. What is code pipeline? It's an orchestrator that invokes code build first and invokes code deploy next. We have put the order in the same way, right? So now code build will be triggered, and it will push a new image, right? Did it push by now? Let's see. Updated an hour ago. It should change to updated few seconds ago. Yeah, updated 8 minutes ago. Probably it's still running. We can go back and check. See, it is still in progress. Once it is done, it will push a new image in the build process. So the build entire thing will be taken place. And then you have the deployment process, where in the deployment process, finally you are deploying the application on the EC2 instance. So you can play with that EC2 instance. You can go to the EC2 instance, log into the EC2 instance, check if the Python application is running or not, check if the container is running or not. So that will be your end-to-end demo of CI/CD process using AWS CI/CD services, right? So how was this entire thing? Like, I took 4 dedicated classes because I want to explain everyone the entire CI/CD workflow. Okay, anyways, now let's see if the image is pushed or not, and let's see if all the stages have passed or not, right? So the first thing updated 2 minutes ago. Yep. So the build stage is successful. It has updated, right? And now if you go to this section, right, the build is successful, but the code deploy has failed. Let us try to see what has happened, right? So first of all, what you can do is you can take the terminal, right, to see if the Docker image is deployed or not, right? So there are 2 steps that we have added. One is Docker image has to be pulled, and the second step is Docker image has to run. So at least if the one step is successful or not. Docker images. Okay, it says Ubuntu user does not have access. Let's say sudo Docker images, because anyways we are running as root. Perfect. So the image is created, right? See, the image is pushed onto it. Now let's see Docker ps, sudo Docker ps. So the Python app is also running, right? But what was the issue? The issue is that we have triggered this code build 2 times, right? So for that, what has happened is when it run for the second time, one is I manually triggered the code build, right? And I've used the same port. So what I need to do is, like initially when I tested the code deploy, I tested it using uh, manually, right? I triggered the code deploy without code pipeline. And what has happened? The port has been already registered, right? So there are 2 ways to solve this one. I hope you understood the error. Let me explain one more time. So code deploy, when I was testing it, what I have done is I have taken this code deploy and I've triggered it manually. When I've triggered it manually, the deployment process was successful and the image was deployed. Then I told you, let's integrate it with the code pipeline and see. Now, when I integrated it with code pipeline, the issue is that, what was the issue? When I integrated it with code pipeline, it again tried to deploy. And if you notice the error here, like go to the link and you will see the same error, that is it already exists. What already exists? The port is already binded because Abhishek, you have done this manually and you did not delete that container. So that's where the stop container.sh the script that I was writing is useful. For the purpose of demo, I did not write it, but see what happened. So in the stop container.sh, I should have ideally stopped the running container, but never mind. Let me show you how did I debug this one. Go to link to execution details. And here what you will notice is that in the link to execution details, the same way, however, triaging, click on view events here and scroll down, see what has failed. So it clearly mentions that Abhishek, your entire deployment process is perfect, but you have already bind the port. That means there is already a container that is running on this port. There are two ways to solve this. One is a stupid way. That is, you can go to the start container.sh and simply change the port. Change the port to 8000. I mean, in container it will be 5000, but on the host you can bind it to 8000. But the best way to do it is in the stop container.sh, just edit it. And what you will do instead of echo hi is just say docker rm minus f. That means you are forcefully deleting the running container. What was the running container? This container has a container name, or you can also delete it with this specific thing, right? So it is always better to write the script in such a way. First of all, you will do docker ps and you will register what is the container id, right? You can get the container id from docker ps. So you can just use this command like this, right? Awk minus f, delimiter is space. And yeah, I know I'm writing it quick, but so I have experience of using this every day. And then you can say print one, and this will give you the output, that is the container id. Then in the next command, that means you can save this as container id is equals to this entire thing. And in the next command, you can simply say docker rm minus f dollar container id, right? So this is how you write the script. So you can take this as a assignment, but for now, for a very quick recap, because I want to complete this demo and show you how I can do it, is just go to the terminal itself and just say docker ps one more time, right? And delete this one. Sorry, sudo docker ps, and let me delete this one. Sudo docker rm minus f followed by the container id. Now, if you do sudo docker ps, there is nothing running. So this time it will be successful, right? So let me show you one final time, because I want to make this demo successful and show you that this entire thing has been implemented, the CICD, but you can also implement the script from your side. It's a very simple script, right? If we go to this entire pipeline, code pipeline, these are the different stages. Now what you can simply do is click on the release change button. Okay, and it will release the entire thing one more time, and this time it will be definitely successful, right? Because there is no container that is running this time. So this time the image will be created and docker image will also be deployed. So this is one simple mistake that I have again done, that is I did not stop the container. So either write script that I've just shared, docker ps, use the awk to get the first uh, uh, use the delimiter as space and get the first string from the entire line, and then you can use it as is and say docker rm minus f followed by delete the container. So that's a very simple assignment. You can take it and you can implement it. Now let's wait for a couple of minutes and see if it is successful or not. Okay, so if you see here, now all the three stages are successful, right? Just by deleting the process on the host, all the three stages are successful. Now, if I simply do sudo docker ps, you will see that the container is up and running, and this is our container. Now you can go to the EC2 instance and access this specific application on port 5000. Just open the inbound traffic rules. I think we have done it multiple times, so you will be capable of doing it. But the important assignment that you have to take from this video is to write the stop container.sh script. So let me share it one more time so that you people will be confident in writing. Either kill the process like me, or go to your terminal. Where is it? For example, let me online notepad. For example, let to quickly show you. and I hope everyone will write this assignment and complete it, spending so much time in making the video. So from your side, just do the assignment and let me know in the comment section, were you able to do it or not. If you are not able to do the assignment, then simply you can follow the same approach that I've done. Even that way you can complete this entire video. But use vim stop container.sh, open the file, and what you will do after that is use this command called docker ps. What docker ps will do? Docker ps will give the output of all the running containers. Then at that point of time, only one container is running on your machine, so on your EC2 instance. So just do pipe, and after that what you will do is use the awk command. Okay, let me increase the font. So what awk does? Awk is basically for the string formatting, or you want to get anything from the huge line. So -f, you can provide the delimiter here, and inside the delimiter, I'll say divide it by space. So whenever there is space, you can split the characters, and inside this, sorry, split the string one. So it will get the first one. Like if you look at the containers, right? So what is it printing? When you say docker ps, it is giving you the container ID followed by the process of the container, etc., etc. So when you do this, then you will get the container ID. So you can store that in something like container ID is equals to, and run this script. After that, what you will do is just use this command called docker rm -f followed by $container ID. So this is the script that you will write, and of course you will use shebang, right? So I hope you will take this very simple assignment and you will complete this video. Let me know in the comment section, how did you find this entire process? How are you feeling once you implement the entire CI/CD process using AWS services on AWS? I am personally feeling very happy that I've taught you this entire process. If you feel the same, let me know in the comment section, and please share this video as much as possible. Thank you so much for watching this video. See you all in the next class. Take care. Bye.